Hello my scrappy peeps, it's Cheyenne the Pixie Crafter and welcome to another scrapbook processing video. Let me tell you, this was one with a lot of trials and tribulations. So here's the photo that I'm going to be scrapbooking. I put it through my Pixel-O-Matic app. Now this is my son and his friends. I'm not entirely sure what happened, but that's the way they were when I walked into the kitchen. Must have been a heck of a game of Dice-capades. Oh, here is some of the paper I'm working with. There's some retired Stampin' Up! And some older stuff from my stash. These two sheets were from a Die Cuts with the View stack. I love how thick some of the Die Cuts with the View papers are. It's really lovely. Now let's get some mixed media. So we are putting some white gesso on this background because I want to do some mixed media to kind of pop out and get some extra colors in there. Now whenever you are working with gesso on a darker background, it is very hard to get a nice pretty blend on the ends like you can with a lighter cardstock. It just tends to like blend off into nothingness. Not so when you're working with darker colors. Now because this was kind of a schoolyard set and it kind of had a chalkboard sort of feel to it, I decided that I was going to go with more of it's a chalkboard that's been wiped off, but there's so much chalk powder on it that it's not completely wiped off a whole lot. So I've used my fingers to smudge it all out, and then I used a baby wipe to kind of get some more texture going, and then I'm going to crumple up a paper towel and I'm just going to start dabbing it down. And I think this kind of blends out those edges a little bit more and gives me a little bit more texture for everything. Now keeping in mind that my photo and all of the layering papers that I'm going to put on is going to cover up a lot of this. So it's going to all come together in the end. And whenever you're doing mixed media, it looks kind of atrocious until you put everything together. So I'm going to go ahead and set that aside to dry. I do prefer to have my things air dry as much as possible, but sometimes you don't have the time and you need to get out a heat tool, right? Oh, I am matting my photo with some Stampin' Up! Basic Black, and then it's time to do some fun, with the Stampin' Up! Pattern paper. I'm so sad that these papers are discontinued. I loved these stacks. Each stack was a different color group for Stampin' Up! And there were 4 patterns and a lot of all of the different colors, and it was fantastic to use. I love them, love them. And I decided that I wanted to use my Stampin' Up! Triple banner punch with these to kind of create some longish banner bits. Oh, the punch will punch out 1 inch, 1.5 inch, and 2-inch wide strips of paper. So that's what I've gone and done. I've done that. I've got them at different lengths as well so that they can be a little staggered. When you are punching your little banner bits, make sure that your paper is kind of facing the right way for what you have in mind. So you see I have some scripty words there, and I wanted to make sure that the banner tag was on the bottom and the words were right side up. Unless you're going for that, look, then, make sure your pattern's going the right way. Then it's time for some fussy cutting. Now, I know not everyone enjoys fussy cutting, and I can't say that it's my favorite thing either, but I do find that having the proper tools really helps. Now, when I'm fussy cutting, I prefer scissors like these. I love these scissors. They're by Fiskars, and I found them at Hobby Lobby. I found a similar pair to this at my local Walmart, and it is kind of a smaller Walmart, so I'm thinking that you can probably find them at your Walmart as well. I don't like having the little finger holes when I'm doing fussy cutting because I find it rubs my thumb and it's just not comfortable. My hand hurts. And the same with X-Acto knives. Like after a while, like my hand just starts to cramp up. I've even got an X-Acto knife that swivels at the end. So if you enjoy an X-Acto knife and you want to do fussy cutting, getting a swivel one is probably a good idea for you. But this is what works best for me, and when you are crafting, you have to make sure you are using the tools, the products, techniques, and everything that you're comfortable with, that work for you. Don't worry about what everybody else is doing in crafting and what tools that they have. Use the ones that work for you. Now, if you do not fussy cut, you are never going to fussy cut, you don't want to fussy cut, then there are a lot of different options for you. There are cut files and stamps and dies that you can invest in and use those instead. I just sometimes enjoy the budget friendliness of fussy cutting. So all you have to have is a good pair of scissors or X-Acto knife and the paper, which can be a lot cheaper than the stamps and dies and cut files. However, with all of those, you can use those multiple times. Oh, all right, I've got everything fussy cut out, and then it's time to pull over my background piece and use my heat tool because it's not dry all the way. And then I realized that I got a little anxious when I was pushing buttons and I did not film any of the background process. So here's what it looks like once I get all of that mixed media on. So let me tell you what I did. I pulled out my re-inkers, Stampin' Up! Real Red and Daffodil Delight and Tim Holtz Wild Honey. And I used the packaging technique to go ahead and smoosh the colors around. So I put a drop on a piece of packaging from an old sticker sheet. I sprayed it with some of my Perfect Pearls DIY mist, so there's a nice shimmer, and then I just smooshed it around randomly and just kept working at it till I liked the way the colors were. I then took some black acrylic paint and I diluted it down on the top of an acrylic block used for stamping clear stamps. And I used my paintbrush to kind of flick little splatter and drops along the outside in black to kind of bring some of the black in. I felt like it needed to be grounded a little bit. I then was done with the background. So that shimmer mist, it's a nice, lovely little added texture to it. And then on all the pattern papers there that I did the banner with, I went ahead and used my Tim Holtz Distress tool and distressed up the edges. And then I took my Pilot Flare pen in black and just did some really sketchy outline lines. I wasn't going for perfection. It looks kind of cartoony, but I really felt like it set them off a little bit. I also matted my photo onto some vellum to kind of give it a little extra. Then I took it over to my sewing machine and I used some white thread to get some stitches around it. And I love the way it's turned out. I definitely have to practice more. So I did a zigzag stitch around the edges and then 2 lines of a straight stitch above and below the banners. It's just a subtle little extra texture. Oh, you can see how I layered up everything and how that background was a little bit more, so yeah, sorry I didn't film it, but I can't go back and redo it. Then it's time to journal. So here is my handy dandy stencil that I got years and years ago, and I love it. I'm using that Pilot Flare pen to go ahead and mark that I just walked into the kitchen and they were like this, and I don't know what's wrong with them, silly kids. And I'm also going to mention that I did pop up the photo with some foam, and everything else is pretty much flat. Some dimensionals were used in the making of that background, but not everything. So next I'm looking and I'm trying to decide what else I want to use. I'm going through my embellishments and stuff, and I'm kind of trying to figure out what I want, and I'm like, all right, I've got to get the date on, so I go ahead and use my Heidi Swap date stamp with the Stampin' Up! Basic black archival ink, and I stamp that. Then I go over to my Cricut, and I realize that I don't have anything. So these are actually digital die cuts from Cartabella. I got them from the Snap Click Supply Company, and they're really fun. So I purchased the files and then I uploaded them into Cricut Design Space. I set them up to print and cut, and that is what I did. I've got them printed onto just some white cardstock, and then I'm kind of playing around with what I want. Those were some stickers that aren't actually going to end up on here, but because the game was Dicecapades, I thought that it would work out. So I'm pretty happy with how everything is turning out, and I'm going to go ahead and start adhering things down with either my Scotch tacky glue or some dimensionals, and yeah, just getting this together. And I really feel like this part really it really completes it. It kind of centers in the photo, and like I love this set from Cartabella. I love Cartabella's stuff. It's kind of like vintagey. Some of it's a little tacky, like the vintagey stuff can do. But yeah, this is a gaming set. I also went ahead and picked up like a Mary Poppins theme embellishment set. My Disney ones that I show you how to go ahead and upload and print out all the different embellishments, the Magical Memories one. It's from Snap Clip Supply Company too, and it's just it's a great source, and I love the finishing touches for that. So here we have the finished layout, and there's lots of different dimension. I really love the way this turned out, and yeah, I'm happy with it. So I hope this inspires you to kind of get into your scrap space and print out those photos and get creative, get your stories out there. And until next time, happy crafting. Bye.